I know the air I'm breathing, it's no good for my lungs. I do this every season, I hate when summer comes. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I'm always self-destructive, I take a hit, I love it. Can you give me a second? I'm slow, got blurry vision. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. Please help me see the things that I am, I don't understand. I'm doing the best that I can right now, but it's never enough. I'm not even ready to slow down. Just slow down. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I know the air I'm breathing, it's no good for my lungs. I do this every season, I hate when summer comes. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I'm always self-destructive, I take a hit, I love it. Can you give me a second? I'm slow, got blurry vision. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. Please help me see the things that I am, I don't understand. I'm doing the best that I can right now, but it's never enough. I'm not even ready to slow down. Just slow down. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I know the air I'm breathing, it's no good for my lungs. I do this every season, I hate when summer comes. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I'm always self-destructive, I take a hit, I love it. Can you give me a second? I'm slow, got blurry vision. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. Please help me see the things that I am, I don't understand. I'm doing the best that I can right now, but it's never enough. I'm not even ready to slow down. Just slow down. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I know the air I'm breathing, it's no good for my lungs. I do this every season, I hate when summer comes. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. I'm always self-destructive, I take a hit, I love it. Can you give me a second? I'm slow, got blurry vision. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. Please help me see the things that I am, I don't understand. I'm doing the best that I can right now, but it's never enough. I'm not even ready to slow down. Just slow down. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now.
Yeah, quite well, thank you. It's been a decent week on the whole. Everything's going all right, and now I get to nearly try and bookend it as my last thing before Friday. Yeah, Friday Fun Day, with a bit of Formula One. That's the best way to go about things, really. Really ecstatic, kind of really happy to be here this week. It's just been a good week overall, and it's nice to top it off with a good bit of Formula One commentary, especially around such a good track as Zandvoort as well. Maybe not for the racing, but just to watch and drive as myself when I've raced and done league races around this circuit. One of my personal favourites. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Leonard Gertz leading the way at the moment, obviously, like you say, with that first and second opening 2 races of the season. But finally, a good result last time out from Jan Haladej as well. That should hopefully promote him into the standings. As you see, it's put him in P3. And hopefully looking to build on that this week as well. So there should be a bit of an opportunity for that to happen around Zandvoort. It's a track with not much overtaking potential. So to have a good qualifying, which is something we've seen out of Haladej so far this season already, is absolutely going to be an asset to him around this circuit, and hopefully one in which he can just use it to kind of pull away at the front of the field and have a grand old merry time with things. So it looks to me like the session is getting started anyway, and hopefully soon we should be seeing the beginning of qualifying. So Reese, why don't you take us away? Game, hopefully yours is. Yeah, all good. Hopefully, are we on the stream? Is it all showing? Just want to make sure. It says hopefully. Just wanted to make sure it pulled over from the track preview. That was all. Yeah, we're all good. We're all good. Nice. Apparently, voices are muted. I don't know if that's true, according to the Twitch chat. Are they not pulling through? Ah.
There
Apologies.
we go. Here we go. Hello.
Okay,
Hello.
there we are.
Introduced with a bit of a mime. That's not the first time that has happened. As we're back once again. Here we go. We have drivers on track and a voice to talk about it. Jane Tropkip, the first one on track, driving for the Haas. About to start a lap. Do you want to do the honours and do a hot lap for them?
Well, I can do, but just as a quick note that we've actually got some news. It seems that Richie has just informed us that Leonard Gertz and Jan Haladej have been promoted to F3 now, so no longer racing in F4 for this season. So that should spice things up a little bit at the top of the table and potentially give some openings to Rishan to have a bit of a better performance after last week and see if there's anybody else who might be able to hold him up at the top as well. As for this, though, like you mentioned, let's go on with Jane Tripkov. He's currently on the lap into this this beautiful sweeping second sector. I just love it. I think it's fantastic and just so fast as well. It feels really, really nice to drive when you hook it up correctly. Obviously, there's some of it which is just straight lining it on the most part or just keeping it flat, which doesn't always feel as amazing to get right. But a lot of it, especially this kind of technical sector here, is really, really fun to nail. And he seems to have done so just an inch or two wide of the apex there on that corner. Now you've got to take a huge chunk of curb on the inside. Try not to ride the curb on the inside of the next corner. And don't wash out too far that you end up compromised on the exit. Now, flick it back right. Fifth gear is usually your best option. Now hug it tight all the way. Bottom of the banking, shortest possible distance to the line, and that's exactly what we're going to see Tripkov get up to, as he puts it on pole already, but he is the only person to have set a lap so far.
Yeah, and I would say a competitive lap. I feel the 109s is going to be an area we're going to see, as a few of the drivers are going to be crossing the line. We're finally actually seeing Rainbow in his true colours. He's not your mum anymore. He's changed his name finally to Rainbow in P9, but we're here with a new driver, and a name that does echo throughout the F1 community, Schumacher, but not in the F1 esports scene. So let's see if Schumacher can pull out maybe a 7-time world championship performance today.
Well, as the new entry to the season here for Formula 4, it's going to be certainly very interesting to see quite what he has to maybe liken up to his namesake. For the time being, this lap is looking at least a little bit contentious, but as he crosses the line, it's good enough for P1 for the time being. Like you mentioned, though, we're anticipating 109s to be coming in later on in the session. So a 110-1 at the moment is still competitive, but as the track starts to ramp up and conditions start to improve, you'd imagine you're going to start to see those times tumble on down. Now, for our top contenders or people we've seen previously having decent performances, Jerry Van Bussel has just finished, or is about to finish, should I say, his first lap of qualifying. Instead of taking the wider line on the exit, that's going to cost him quite a fair amount of time, and instead only ends him up in 13th. I can't help but feel with the way that he ended that lap that he might have compromised himself somewhere in the middle of it, so decided to kind of take it a little bit easier just to get on around and not commit everything to it and risk binning his qualifying off.
Yeah, and taking account, there's what, 3-4 runs you can do on this track. Plus, also, as the laps go on, we're laying down the rubber. It's going to become grippier. And also, the drivers are still going to be tweaking with the car. I know they've had practice with this game. They've made sure their cars feel right. But they're further going to tweak it even further. We're not in Parc Ferme rules until the qualifying ends.
Correct. Well, you do get the option to change some features, actually. I think, no, Parc Ferme does hit on as soon as qualifying starts. But you do still, of course, have the option to change your tyre temperatures and your front wing. They are the only two things of which you are allowed to change once Parc Ferme settings have been enabled. And the front wing, to be fair, is relatively significant. That allows you to kind of dial in a little bit more front end and maybe make the car a tad pointier, but you do come with the risk of not being able to change the rear wing, that you make your car quite snappy, oversteery, and difficult to control in the middle of the corner. And on the contrary, you take some wing off, you're going to understeer, and that's not going to be perfect either. And when you can't quite maintain the balance between the front and rear wings when you've got that Parc Ferme mode on, it can often compromise it. So the best bet is to try and nail your setup before you come into the session. And that's what we're seeing here by the looks of things with Bartosz Samaro, as he's set a purple Sector 1 at the moment. Not quite sure whether that's to be believed, but so far so good on this lap for now. Tight to the apex there on that corner, and now going to try and make sure he keeps it kind of late apex you want to catch here, halfway, even 2/3 of the way through the corner, because it's so long, it seems to go on forever, just waiting to get the power down. But again, another good sector, a 48.8 in that second sector. Now again, same theory with that corner just there. That's turn 12, I believe, as now this is turn 13, where you flick it in fifth gear, try not to run too wide on the track limits, as he has done, taps the wall and absolutely royally buggers his lap just from that instant alone, and will dive straight into the pits to strap on a new set of softs.
Absolutely. No point completing that lap. You're just going to waste time. If you pit now, you can get yourself another lap in. Rainbow, who is on a lap, and it's looking decent. 109, 110. It's high 110s, so good enough for P12, and a bit more work is definitely needed as drivers will start to now cross the line, begin. I've got Gale, or starting, well, he'll be restarting his lap as a 158. So he's done a out lap, another lap, and is about to do another lap again to put in a time. So are we seeing warm-up laps maybe coming into play to get more heat in the tyres? Who else is there?
No, I don't think that's likely to be the case, to be honest, in the Formula 1 game. Sure, in real life, you might get a lot of that, but this track is so intensive on tyres with the change of direction and the mechanical grip that is required that generally you won't want to be doing more than one warm-up lap on it. The out lap is sufficient, especially with the way that the softs wear in terms of the tyre degradation. So it's best in the case of Tamascal to just kind of get out there, throw a lap in and get out of it. But I'm guessing made a mistake early into his first lap. If I'm watching it correctly, he might have just made a little bit of a mistake in this one too. But you're not watching that. You're watching Istvan Nagy at the moment, who is just on the same section of track as the man I was just talking about in Tamascal, just slightly further down the road, and has just set a rather good and rather competitive second sector. Just needs to get it hooked up here in the final sector. Big snap of oversteer on the exit of turn 12. Flicking it in for turn 13 once again. Hopefully he doesn't go wide and into the wall as we saw Bartos Samaro do, but this is looking like a decent lap time, Reese.
It's looking decent as well, as there's a new fastest lap as we edge very close to the 109s. It's going to be a bit more that they need to do. Istvan puts himself in 4th. Can the Haas driver... No, he's actually... I was about to say, can he improve? He's already a second down, so clearly not worked for him. Who else? Rashan, is he on a lap? He's improving, but only by small amounts. Not enough, really, to drop into the 109s. I feel 109s might not be possible with the F4 group. The F1, the tier 1 group, 100% will be seeing 109s. Oh. There is Rashan. Yeah, that rear end is not too happy right now and wants to go into Formula Drift instead of Formula 4.
That's exactly what I was talking about earlier as well, with just having a little bit of imbalance on the front and rear wings. Sometimes you can set your car up to be snappy. Other drivers like that. I mean, examples of that in real life. Max Verstappen loves a snappy kind of car. As long as it points in on the front end, he's happy to handle the rear later on. And most drivers opt for a similar strategy when it goes for setup. Reason being, of course, is that it's much easier to be able to control oversteer than it is to live with understeer. You're always just going to be slower when you've got that understeer because you can't do anything about it. You can't really drive around it as such. Anyway, speaking of trying to drive around things, it seems to me that Andre Molnar is trying to drive his way around the Zandvoort track for a decent lap here. Currently resides in P13, whereas his teammate sits currently atop the timing screens on that pole position. He's only up marginally at the moment at the end of the first sector, which you'd imagine is where there's a decent chunk of time to gain on traction alone. Bit wide of the apex there on that flat, or that slightly quicker corner. Again, wide of the apex here as well. This is looking a little bit flustered from Andre Molnar. We'll see if he can make up the time, but he's definitely leaving some out there on the track at the moment.
It's questionable. Let's see what he goes over the sector time. He's going 3 tenths faster, so this is a competitive lap. This will currently put him around P10, P9-ish, roughly. Of course, he's still got more of the track to work with, and if he's pumping in lap times like this, maybe he might be nearer the top. It was purple middle. Is it a purple last? He comes across the line. It's only good enough for P7, so he does find a bit more time, but there's still more room to improve to close down on the 110-1s.
Yeah, I think there's a lot left on the table there for Molnar in that middle sector. Sorry, it was just a fraction wide of the apex on 2 different corners, 2 entries. I just couldn't quite get the car to turn in and to bite into the asphalt on that first time of asking. Either which way, is anyone else on a lap at present? I think Jane Tripkov might have just started one. I see you're already on board, ready and waiting. So let's take an onboard view with this lap, shall we?
Absolutely, let's do take an onboard lap as we're already heading into the end of the first sector. It's positive on his time, so no improvement at the moment. Through turn 7, very easy to catch a bit of understeer and push that car wide. Now through turn 8, avoid the curb or you cut it massively. Either one of the options, but you've got to make up your mind. You can't half commit because you will spin. Turn 8, that curb's horrible. Keep away, but also stay close. Capitalize on the track as much as you can. Into the DRS zone, heavy braking into turn 11. It's quite, you cut that corner as well before dabbing onto the curb of turn 12. Power it up, and then you shift down, as you said, to 5th gear. See, drop 1, power it through, keep the res high, and then start shifting up, keeping low. Hold that line as low as possible, come across the line, and it's looking, it's an improvement, but an improvement for P5. I thought that was going to be higher because the timing screens went higher.
Yeah, it was looking like a promising lap, but again, onboards can often be deceiving. You do often feel like you're going much faster than you in reality are. Speaking of someone going faster at the moment, though, there's an Alfa Romeo that currently sits in 6th place in the hands of Tuomas Lamminen. The Finn is currently on a hot lap, and it is looking to be an improvement. At the end of the second sector, he was a 10th and a half up on his personal best, and he's about to cross the line to take us ever so closer to the nines. It's dangerously close to that territory, and it is a whole 10th faster than Thomas Gal.
Yeah, but Thomas Gal, he's on his run. It's not good enough at the moment. So who's on a lap? Milan Mayer. He's dipping close. He'd be dropping at the moment under the 110s. Well, 110s 1 and into the 110 0. So has he got anything at the end of the second sector? He tries to catch the Red Bull slipstream, but he's now positive. So he's clearly lost time somewhere within the second sector. Can he make somewhat so an improvement to jump him? He can just jump past Schumacher if he plays his cards right, but he has to play them right. He comes up to the line. It's good enough for P3, so yes, he can jump him.
Oh, tragic as well. Heartbreaking, really. Only 1,000th slower than Thomas Gal in second place. So that could have popped him onto the front row if he'd have just found 2,000ths of a second there. That was all that was required. Speaking of other people finishing laps as well, I think Nicola Aleda is currently finishing his lap 2. Wasn't looking too great when I flicked onto him, but it is going to be a marginal improvement of just under 500ths of a second, which is enough to promote him into P4 from P5. So that removes Sven Schumacher from the second row and puts him on the third row with his teammate Jane Tripkov at the moment.
Yeah, who's in contention? So Nicola Adelaide. He's starting his lap. Let's see what he comes across on the sector time. Ooh.
He's just finished his lap.
Oh, he just finished. Oh,
yeah.
You could tell I was distracted elsewhere. Let's who's on a lap? Who's on a lap? Give me somebody. Rishan's definitely not on a lap. I'll tell you who it is actually. Schumacher. We've mentioned his name. That's definitely not a lap competitive time. So is he doing an extra lap as somebody has retired and they're done with the session? No, Schumacher's made a mistake. So dive into the. Well, I can't see the time. Show us time. 3 minutes. They've got enough time. Yeah. They've got enough time to go back into the pits, quickly change the tires, and go for one last run.
Seeing lots of people retiring from the session here. I'm not sure as to the reason why. Maybe they're just done with their session. They haven't got any more tires left to do and couldn't improve any further, so would rather just go and watch. I'm not too sure whether it might even be weather related, potentially, as I'm seeing almost everybody who's attempting a lap at the moment diving into the pits. There is one person who seems to be committing to a lap at the moment, though, and I think that's actually Andre Molnar, who's just started. I'm not sure. I think at least hasn't just finished. So let's see if he's really pushing it on this lap at the moment. It seems so. Battery is being used, so that's a positive sign at the very least, with all these people diving into the pits at the moment. There's yellow flagged out on track at the moment because of retirees or somebody who's gone on. I think that was Miltos Karafalidis who's gone on at turn 1, so that first sector is yellow flagged at the moment, but that won't be a pressing problem in the F1 game as it would be in real life. Lots of curb taken there as well to try and counteract some understeer. Am I seeing specks of rain, or is this just... Yeah, I am seeing specks of rain. There is definitely rain on my screen, and I think that's why we're seeing drivers retiring from the session, simply because there is not going to be enough grip out on the track. So you had to get your laps in, and unfortunately with the rain now falling, the track is not going to evolve any further, and it is only going to get worse. And as such, that's what we're seeing. I think the grid is already going to be set, Reese.
I think so as well, which means our pole sitter
Laminem,
thank you. I will get that name. It's a new name to the scene, so give me a couple of races, we'll get there. Lamine taking pole at 110.034, so we're so close to the 109s. My prediction was slightly off, but I think if we had maybe a couple more laps, one more run, I think the lap times would have dropped down to the 109s. But realistically, this has really shaped up the grid. Rashan down in P9, currently second in the championship. That ain't good for him. And then we've got a newcomer of Schumacher in P5, really kind of spicing things up a little bit. So a mixed grid we have here.
Yeah, most certainly a mixed grid, to say the least. Obviously with Joe Van Bussel uncharacteristically down in 16th position at the moment. Miltos Karafalidis, who's been our kind of front runner most of this season so far. Even drivers such as Bartos Samaro down in P10. We've seen him contending for podium places in Spain. It is definitely a bit shaken up. And as such, I have a feeling that we might get a variety of strategies. We might see different people electing to go for some maybe alternate strategies, hard to medium. We might see medium to hard. In fact, we don't even know what the race conditions are going to be like yet. There is a likelihood that with it being a wet qualifying, that it could also start to transition in towards being a damp or changeable condition race. So we'll see how this one ends up transpiring. Of course, we just need to wait for 2 more people to retire from the session, who are currently, one of which is out on track, in Thomas Lamminen, just taking his lap of honor for taking the pole position, I suppose. And then we'll be able to find out what those conditions are looking like for the race.
All right, so I quizzed the drivers. Tripov said dry, and then oh wait, no, he's saying full dry, but Karafalidis is saying rain, I think. So even the drivers are still hit and miss, because Tripkov is confident it's a full dry. Jerry Van Bussel, yeah, after these guys are not helpful. A note to self: don't ask drivers what the weather's going to be, because clearly they don't know.
They're not going to help you.
No, they ain't going to help you. Rashan saying dry, so yeah, I think it's going to be a dry race.
Okay. Well, we'll soon find out anyway. There's only so much that we can end up waiting for. So, dry after 10 minutes or something. I don't know. Raining after the first 10 minutes, according to Jerry Van Bussel. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen here? By the way, just as an interesting tidbit, Miltos Karafalidis, the yellow flag that he brought out in Sector 1 from crashing, was because his pedals malfunctioned after the finish line. That's a good one. Just went straight on.
Are they working now? Question mark?
I would most certainly hope so. Otherwise, turn 1 is going to be interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, we're going to get a repeat of the Silverstone Grand Prix where you see drivers on top of their heads and going into walls. I say that
sounds delicious.
Yeah, I say that lightheartedly. Of course, we're very concerned of Joe Guan Yu, and I'm so glad he is safe and fine. Hence why
the weirdest part, by the way, was when I was there at Silverstone this year when that crash happened, and I was over at Cops. So we didn't really see it properly on the television because I didn't want to show the accident because, for obvious reasons, maybe he was injured, maybe there was, some kind of accident that had gone on that I didn't want to demonstrate. But we knew something was happening. So for about 10 minutes, we were sat there on our phones frantically trying to figure out why there was a red flag because there wasn't really much data available while we were at the track and because everybody was using it, obviously, to try and find out as we were. And there wasn't really much information given either. And the track commentary was very hard to hear. So I remember that very, very well. In the end, we ended up seeing that it was because some protesters had gone onto the hangar straight as for 1, and of course that crash at the beginning of the race for 2.
So I've just got a screen of the tyre strategy as well. So either a 2-stop or it's going to be a 1-stop. I think it's going to be 1-stop is going to be clearly what everyone's going to do.
Most likely, yeah.
But the forecast is cloud with the sunshine, cloud with sunshine, and then sunshine. So that's indicating it could go either way.
I have a strong feeling then that it will remain dry, but it may be difficult if you're starting on the hard tyres when there's not a lot of sunshine on the track to get the temperature, because the track temperature will be down. So we may see some people opting for the medium tyres here, but that generally doesn't play too much of a role in the F1 game as it would naturally in normal and real life. Either way, we'll get things underway. We are currently up to those 5 red lights, and we're about to be off to the races. It is Thomas Lamminen, the Finn, on pole, and he's got away well. He's under some serious contest, though, from Milan Meyer, who's trying to swoop around the outside, and Tomascal, who's got him on the inside. A great first phase of the start from Thomas Lamminen, but the second phase has royally mugged him, and he has been mugged by 3 different drivers down 3 positions on that opening lap. Could not get the power down on those hard tyres, which I believe is what almost everybody on the grid has opted for. We already have our first issue. That's QKS, who is now dropped to the back of the field. Some kind of issue off the start. Didn't quite catch what it was.
Yeah, and Miller Mayer capitalizing on that from the get-go, gaining 2 positions critically, and that's going to massively help him on a track that is not the easiest to overtake, as we can see 3 cars going through turn 10, as they head down what would be the DRS straight. Of course, no DRS for the next couple of laps. And Schumacher up into P3. So the Alfa Romeo driver is just going backwards as Tripkov is also trying to fight his way around the outside and definitely wants a piece of the Alfa Romeo. But further back, you can see the Calafridas is under pressure by Andre Molnar, and its van does get past him, but Molnar is in danger of Milan, and here we go, more of the back runners trying to get a piece of action. Jerry Van Bussel's in a critical danger moment as the Aston Martin driving, trying to go around the outside. It's not going to work, and that's going to allow the Williams driver, Patrick Halder, to try and move, but Patrick holds back, plays patient. Jerry Van Bussel is going to go for it. That's its van has gone down, and Jerry Van Bussel is in danger once again. He has got a swarm of cars all around him, and the Alfa Romeo driver heading this pack, probably looking at his rearview mirrors going, nah, I ain't getting involved. Milan trying to go down the inside. He has to defend hard to hold off the AlphaTauri, but the AlphaTauri will go up the inside, and Andre Molnar will skid out. He's re-given back the Red Bull and the Aston Martin driver, though he goes through the Aston Martin driver, holds position for now.
Wow, what an opening lap that has been, especially towards this little battle going on here. It's all being bottlenecked at the moment by Miltos Karafalidis. We saw at the beginning of the race as well, by the way, Bartos Samaro on the medium tyres trying to make moves happen early round the outside, especially down at turn 12, which is where he ended up falling out of position after getting tapped and spun around. But then we saw basically 3 wide for the entirety of the lap here from this little battle. And as such, it has caused Miltos Karafalidis and the rest of the crew behind him to lose touch with that little train up front. So what was looking like a very together race has suddenly become a much further spread out battle at the moment. And even up towards the front, if we divert our attention there for a minute, the gaps are looking pretty large here as well. Milan Mayer doing his best to try and set pace and stretch the field. And it seems to me that Sven Schumacher can't quite keep up with that for the moment, because Thomas Gau is also pulling off from him too.
Yeah, I think that AlphaTauri driver's not going to be able to stick with the McLaren driver for too much longer. If Mayer just keeps on the pace, keeps pumping in the laps, the way he's done it on the first lap, he will break that second mark, and that AlphaTauri is going to struggle. But at the moment, he's holding still. As lap 3, we should be getting DRS now. There's the rear wing. It opens up. So staying in play for now, but ooh, he's not really close enough to capitalize on the slipstream. So, and especially with Milan Mayer putting in a hot lap, I realistically don't think it's going to be too long until we see a second.
I, however, do think it'll be quite a while until we see a second, based off of the fact of the battery percentages that are currently being held in reserve by both drivers. So, at the moment, Milan Mayer currently resides with 3% battery. He has burned every modicum of power that he has at his disposal in these first 3 laps. He's going to have to really wait to try and get that battery back under his belt. Meanwhile, Tomas Gau's been sitting pretty. He's been using that DRS to keep him in contention, not really touching the ERS button too much, and has nearly 70% worth of his energy deployment left to use. So with that being said, I think it's going to be unlikely that we'll see Milan Mayer continue to pull away from Tomas Gau, because Milan Mayer has been disposing of that battery so much on these opening laps.
He has, and a bit further back, Sven Schumacher, he's only just dipped himself back in. There you go. He's on the cusp right now of losing the DRS, and he has lost the DRS. You can just see him as Thomas Gau does set the fastest lap of the race very early on and brings himself right back into this fight for the first position. But yeah, as I was mentioning, 3rd and 4th a second from each other, as well as 3rd being a second from 1st. So gaps are forming as Jerry Van Bussel, a bit further back as well, is 2 seconds behind, but has a lovely Alfa Romeo up his rear end.
Yes, and that Alfa Romeo has been the one that's been causing them problems from the very beginning of this race, with bottlenecking the field somewhat and keeping them a little bit further behind than they would like to be. So Van Bussel with a lot of work on his hands here if he wants to try and catch up to the back of Jane Tripkov and Tuomas Laminen, who are currently trying to remain in hot pursuit of Nicola Eleda up in fourth. So that's a nice little train up there, which makes it all the more complicated and all the more difficult to try and catch that little trio moving up ahead of them. And to further add to Van Bussel's woes, his battery is not looking very charged either, just sitting on 20% at the moment. So it's going to have to be a bit of a struggle to see whether Van Bussel can get his battery recharged or potentially even bridge that gap by other means.
Yeah, but if Miltos gear changes like he did on the exit of turn 12, then he might be okay as he over revs, trying to deploy the ERS on the exit of the corner. You don't want to be doing that. As shall we divert our attention to the front as that gap gets really, really juicy? And I think Tomas is not waiting for too long. I wouldn't be surprised if this man decides to go for the overtake, as he can see the flashing red light at the rear of the car, which, for people who are new to the F1 scene, welcome. Welcome to Formula 1 esports. So glad to have you here. The flashing red rear light doesn't mean the car's recharging like a normal F1 car. Instead, it's indicating to the drivers that that car has about 10% ERS left. So, that's a sign for everybody to go, right, I'm going to have a go at that car.
Yeah, less than 10% is the flashing red light, and as such, it does, like you say, give some indication to the drivers behind that it might be safe to make an overtake or use some of that battery. And here's the other thing to think of as well. In the event that Tomas Gal, who now has 70% battery, is going to make this overtake this time around, which we're predicting that he at least should, because Sven Schumacher is coming back into contention, it would mean that he might be able to get away from Milan Mayer to a safe distance too. The longer he sits behind, the longer the pace starts to kind of slow down a bit here. In the middle sector, Sven Schumacher was very nearly back inside of that DRS window, which is the last thing that Tomas Gal will want right now. He wants this to be a two-horse battle between he and Milan Mayer for the longest possible time. Now, if Milan does not pick up the pace, it kind of forces Tomas's hand here. He has to pull through and has to try and break him, because Tomas is not going to be recharging... Sorry, Milan is not going to be recharging his battery all that much without DRS. DRS is huge in terms of recharging your battery much quicker, because it gives you that extra closing speed, allows you to brake that little bit harder when you come into the corner, and as such, you put more kinetic load through the battery, recharging it faster.
Yeah, I'll tell you who also is on the cusp as well. Adelaide is very, very close to closing that gap with Schumacher and getting himself within the second, but he's carrying behind him this little trio of drivers. So if he closes that gap, it'll be Schumacher, Adelaide, Laminen, and Tripkov as a train, and then because Schumacher's so close, that will then bring from first all the way down to sixth. So it's critical that, as you mentioned, Tomas needs to really think, all right, this driver's really close behind me. I need to do something here to prevent the opportunity of them being a massive train and danger behind me.
Now, I don't know whether it is like the close following dirty air that Tomas Gal is struggling with at the moment, but throughout the middle sector and especially the final sector, he doesn't seem to have the pace to stay in contention with Milan Mayer. Just on that last lap, he dropped back by about 0.3 of a second. Has not used any battery, however, so maybe that could be part of the mystery that I'm trying to unravel. But whichever way you try and slice it, it doesn't seem like Tomas Gal is overly comfortable in his position. You see just in that corner there, I think it's turn 10, really struggles, loses a bit of time to Milan Mayer in front, and as such, it puts him out of touch for making an overtake on that front straight, and also is bringing Sven Schumacher back into the contention as well. Look at that now, below 1 second, but if Schumacher can maintain that past the detection point, which I don't quite think he will have done by this time round, he'll be back in DRS. I think he may just have been ever so slightly out of it.
Yeah, I don't think Tomas is confident with that throttle pedal. I'm just watching particularly, hence why I brought the telemetry up. He's not fluid with that. It comes on and he's hesitant with it before applying. There's no smooth action to it. He's not, I don't know, it's something about it. As someone has retired, that is Milan. The other Milan, not Milan Mayer. Milan from the Red Bull driver. He has retired from this race and will, and it's quite disappointing because he was doing quite well off the get-go.
Yeah, it was looking like a promising race for him, at least where he was up to in proceedings already. I will give a quick shout out, by the way, though, to QKS. who has come back from being punted in the first lap on the medium tyres up to 11th as of the moment. Bartos Samaro has not had the same fortune, neither has Istvan Nagy. So we'll keep an eye on the Aston Martin's progress, but for the time being, it's been pretty positive so far. Either which way, we'll divert our attention back to the front because this 2-horse race has now officially just become a 3-horse race, as Sven Schumacher has reacquired DRS.
Yeah, and Schumacher's done a brilliant job, but you can see, as we mentioned before, that flashing red light, so he's put a lot of effort to get to the position that he's in, and that might cost him, because the driver ahead is sitting around 70% ERS himself. He's got confidence to just pull away if need be. So he has to play smart. The light's gone, so he's just put himself over that 10%, but we know there's not a lot left at all, which it's a danger zone. It really is a danger zone, and he's grasping at, you know, threads at this point to stay within that second.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And for those of you out there who, like we've mentioned before, might be new to F1 esports and the F1 game, you might be thinking, if you've watched real F1, oh, why don't they just put the battery on like harvest mode and get some ERS back? Unfortunately, in the game, we don't have a harvest mode. You can't run without ERS. You're always going to be passively discharging some of the battery throughout the lap. So you will fluctuate in the amount of the battery that you have at your disposal over the course of the lap, of course. You'll expend it when you're on a straight, just passively, and then when you're in the corners, you'll generally start to recoup some. But so you only have like a net gain and net loss. You don't really tend to gain too much. But speaking of gaining, it looks to me like Thomas Laminen is having a bit of a gain. He's made a move upon Nicola Aleda. It has been a bit of a stalemate with that little trio in 4th, 5th and 6th for quite some time, but it's finally at lap 11 where Laminen has decided that it's time to try and stake his claim over this race. He feels he's got more pace. He's going to try and get back up to the back of Sven Schumacher. Yeah,
and he had a truckload of ERS. I don't think he actually used it through the start-finish straight, and already you can see the purple markings on that first sector. So maybe he has deployed a bit of it in the first sector, dropped it down from 1.4. It's already 1.15, and he's definitely using it. Is he going to purple the middle sector? That will tell you if he's pushing like mad. Coming up to the sector mark, yes he is. So yes, he is trying to hunt down Sven Schumacher, close up the gap, and he is in that second mark. So brilliant work by Thomas Laminen. He has done what he needs to. Just get a bit closer, and it's job well done.
Yeah, he has absolutely dispensed the battery on this lap, by the way. Started it with around 45% battery, ends it with 6%. He has drained the thing. But I do feel that looking back at his strategy so far this race, sitting in behind Aleda for as long as he has been, has kind of enabled him to have some DRS and some ERS recovery. Speaking of some recovery, though, here's Jane Tripkov recovering yet another position from Nicola Aleda, who is just losing out. Round the outside, all the way up towards turn 3, managed to get it just before the entry because 2 does not quite go into 1 in there. And as such, now Nicola Aleda relegated down to 6th in just 2 laps, 2 circles around this circuit, and all of a sudden he's lost out big time. But going back to Laminen, he's going to want to now sit behind, I think, for a little while, keep in this DRS train, recharge his battery, and then try and use the tyres that he's been saving, try and use the battery that he will have built up to get on to that front 2, try and dispose of Sven Schumacher.
You have to remember there's 36 laps of this race. A lot of these drivers have started on the hard. I'll bring it up for you. There you go. 11 laps have gone, all on hard. KQS running those mediums hasn't really capitalized fully using those mediums, which means he's now going to then be at a disadvantage later on, as there is Jerry Van Bussel. He has crashed, and that is a full course safety car. Is it virtual though? It doesn't show up on our screen. Let me find a board. It is a safety car. Full-blown safety car is out. So talking of tyres, are we too early to go for a pit stop? No, a lot of the drivers have gone in and are changing over to the mediums already.
It won't be a bad thing because you don't get too much tyre wear whilst you're behind the safety car. And let's say the safety car is inevitably going to sit out for, what, 2 to 3 laps. If you can get in as soon as you can and strap on those medium tyres, you're basically going to get yourself a decent chunk of the way through the race. Not quite halfway, but it's certainly going to be better than taking the stop later on. You're going to have to really look after these medium tyres, though, because otherwise it is going to be a struggle. That accident for Van Bussel, by the way, I'm not quite sure if he was tagged by another driver, but either way, ended up with his nose pointing towards the bottom of the embankment on the famous final corner. So something really must have gone horribly wrong for him to end up there. Whether he slid out of his own accord or whether it was a incident caused by another driver, we'll soon find out. But there is the safety car that you can see that Rainbow has just passed, and the front runners are about to be appearing up to the rear of at the end of this lap.
All right, this opens up a question. Lap 13 out of 36. Is a two-stop option viable in this situation? Because in theory, we could see one of these drivers decide, you know what?
Why has Sven Schumacher just got 6 seconds worth of penalties, by the way, instantly?
No idea.
I'm sure that will be reviewed.
Definitely will be reviewed.
Speaking of Sven Schumacher... Oh, that's horrible. That's really horrible for Jane Tripkov. He made the decision to come into the pits and as such got held up by Sven Schumacher. So he's going to lose out massively in terms of time. That overtake that he made on Nicola Aleda has now been completely undone as a result of that. And
his teammate jumping up to P5. So,
yeah, Miltos Karafalidis as P5. Yeah, that's not particularly great.
Rainbow's got
but Karafalidis...
Rainbow's got to drive through a bit further back for speeding behind the safety car, and he's sped in the pit. Yeah, he's done. He's done. Interesting.
Just going back to Karafalidis, I think that he was so far back that he was able to pit as soon as the safety car came out. He got fortuitous timing on that accident. But obviously, at the time, we knew that he was relatively close behind Van Bussel. So whether he was involved in the accident or not, it remains to be seen. He has still usurped a couple of places. If you go onto the tyres by pressing D on your keyboard, you'll be able to show everybody that Miltos Karafalidis has 1 lap worth of tyres. You press D, you cycle through the different detail options. There you go.
Wait. What's the other button then? What's the other shortcut?
T brings up telemetry.
Ooh. Oh, I'm learning things.
L brings up lap details. Little tidbits for you.
Yeah, I did not know that. Wow, okay. That's my excitement for the day.
But yes, like I was saying, Karafalidis benefits massively from the accident with Van Bussel, and now the safety car is about to come in.
Yeah, we will be back racing once again. It's going to be critical for Milan Meyer to pounce at the right time. He's going to wait till the latest point as possible underway, and it's all going to be stable unless you're at the back, of which you can see, glitches out of place, but it's going to come back into play as the drivers will slowly organize themselves. Not so well as Istvan Nage is having to battle off at Grufu, the Mercedes driver, but Istvan getting a brilliant exit. He might have a go at QKS, who is running those hard tyres. Remember, he's starting on medium, so he's disadvantaged against these drivers who are running on the medium tyres right now. As round the outside, no opportunity there. Bit further up, that's Tripkov and Nico Adelaide going side by side, and Adelaide losing out, and he's probably going to lose out with a bit more if he doesn't get the pace up.
Yeah, Aleda really having an absolute nightmare at the moment. Whilst he did get back ahead of Tripkov in the pit stop phase, he has absolutely lost out in these last few laps. However, just looking at the tyre situation for a few drivers on the grid here, I think QKS and Bartos Samaro could actually be well positioned at the moment, despite the fact that they're on the hard tyres and it might not seem well. Like at the moment, thinking of it this way, these medium tyres have ultimately got to do approximately 22 laps. Towards the end of this race, these hard runners could be in for an absolutely massive payday.
They definitely could, as Nicola getting back past Andre, and that's what he needs in his race, because he's gone backwards. Let's be honest, the Red Bull driver it's not his day at all, and the drivers still haven't settled, because a bit up ahead I can see Tripkov getting punchy against Miltos, and there's no settlement for these drivers until we get 5 laps after a restart, and then they're going to calm down as Tripkov, you can see, almost shoving the Alfa Romeo driver through turn 9 and round turn 10. He's going to look down the inside. That's creative.
It's going to be tight.
It's going to be touching wheel to wheel as up through into the DRS straight. DRS not activated just yet, and he will get the braking, will get the position into turn 11 and turn 12, but the Alfa Romeo driver will have the straight to his advantage. So he's got the slipstream to help him. Who else is pretty close? It's Van Nage is on the back of Andre Molner. And Molner, well, he's going to be driving under his rear view mirrors that you can see Rashan are currently second place in this championship. Gets past into the points.
Yes, finally moving up in the world. It's not been the best of days for the Ferrari drivers so far, but the Dutchman will be hoping to get some better results moving on with this one. Of course, late race pace is generally where he has excelled this season so far. At least in Spain, it most certainly was. But this race is not quite coming to him in the same way. Has a decent chunk of battery still remaining, but he's going to have to use a fair deal of that to get back to the rear of Istvan Nagy. But things seem to have settled down just a tad at the front of the field. A gap starting to open up once again with Thomas Gal and Milan Meyer. And it seems that Milan Meyer has learned his lesson from the last time and is now holding on to some of that battery to dispense to break that second mark, which he is now looking to do. Of course, DRS has not been active for those last few laps since the safety car restart, and now the McLaren driver is really looking to try and make Thomas Gal feel the pain. Of course, that's going to have to force a response from Thomas, who is in turn using his battery to try and maintain DRS on Milan Meyer, but Meyer has just got far enough in front.
Yeah, and you can critically see the drivers behind Thomas has the DRS, so they're going to put pressure on the AlphaTauri driver. The McLaren driver will try and send himself down this road with less worry of what's behind him. But we know these drivers, if they want to, and they want to put their foot down, they will close that gap very nicely. The top three have shown that in their own cases, and Thomas is putting in a purple first, so he's trying to re-close the gap and get himself in a DRS position, keeping Milan Meyer in play. And Sven Schumacher, he's got to respond as well, because critically, he's now in the second danger zone himself. And he's going to realise that when he doesn't have DRS, and the driver behind him does. So he's under threat by another driver. It's a chain reaction here. One's going to go, and then the other one's going to pull ahead, and then they're going to chase after. It's just going to keep going down the line.
Yes, indeed it is, and we're going to see a bit of tactical gameplay here from Thomas Gal and Milan Meyer, who are both disposing of their batteries to try and break one another. But now that Thomas Gal has that DRS, it's going to be no longer possible. Now, despite the fact that Gal has less battery to his disposal than Meyer does at the moment, it'll be recovered quicker with him being inside of that DRS window. So bear that in mind, that with the extra speed that you have on the straight, it leads to harder braking and more ERS recovery. So just keep that in the back of your mind throughout the course of this phase of the race here, and we'll get to see which one of these two drivers can pull it out of the bag. But as you mentioned, this little quartet seems to have reinstated itself at the front of the field. Jane Tripkov has just slipped outside of that magical 1 second window and is now going to be heading up the second part of the field, 5th down.
Can I just point something out? I've just realised these drivers are taking the game-related line for turn 3 and not the realistic line that we see.
Yeah.
Now, critically, for those who have not seen the Dutch Grand Prix, the realistic line, when we think of racing lines, we normally go from the outside, we cut to the inside, and back to the outside. Thank you, gentlemen, for demonstrating to us perfectly how it normally goes. But turn 3 is one of those really banked corners. Now, all these corners are very, very banked in themselves. So naturally, you can take a different line, as we might have to hold fire for 2 seconds. Nope, we are... Yes, there will be an overtake as Miltos will get past Tripkov. And watch here. The drivers naturally are taking the traditional inside to out. Now, we've seen the Tier 1 drivers taking that F1 line and gaining about a small tenth or two faster. So I'm surprised these drivers aren't using the real F1 line, which is round the outside, using that bank to kind of slingshot their way out.
Well, also, because of the camber of the corner, you do generally maintain a little bit more minimum apex speed if you go higher on the corner, because you don't have to turn the wheel as much, naturally. So as such, you kind of use the camber of the corner to maintain that all-important minimum apex speed that you may hear so much about. And just generally carry more MPH through the corner. And that's the whole idea behind it. Obviously, the F1 game doesn't really replicate all of the physics of the real-life F1 cars perfectly. Let's not get it twisted. The Formula 1 22 title is not really a true simulation of what it's like to drive a Formula 1 car. It's a bit arcadey in that aspect, but hey, it's good, it's still fun, and it also has all the cars and drivers that we like to see. So that's the reason why we race it. It is good fun.
Absolutely.
And, well, it makes a bit of a difference as well, makes a change. You don't always see the exact same thing. And, yeah, like you say, takes you a while to realise that wasn't happening unless you're really looking out for it.
Exactly, and it's not the first time you see alternative lines used by these drivers. You'll see them take the corners that bit wider. They're using a lot more curb than you'd see the real F1 cars. There is so much difference and so much exploits, hence why lap records here are actually a lot quicker. We're talking, what, nearly a second or two quicker on the game than it is in real world, hence demonstrating this is definitely more arcadey than it is a simulator, but still an absolute brilliant sport to watch this is, and when the racing is as good as this, close but has its moments of overtakes, it keeps you on edge.
Well, also, one thing you got to consider as well, especially with like curbs that you can take considerably more of, is that you don't necessarily have to worry so much about damaging the car in this, because you're in it for one race and you don't have to worry about damaging the floor, damaging the engine, whatnot. The damage model isn't quite so sophisticated, so you run over a curb and you don't get like a piece of debris trapped underneath your car, or you run over a curb too many times and it starts to wear on the suspension. You don't kind of have that problem, so you can take a few more liberties much more consistently, and it is reflected in the way that the lap times, like you say, are far off what is represented in real life. So that definitely plays a part of it. But either way, back to the racing. Let's try and refocus our attention down on in. It seems that Miltos Karafalidis is starting to try and stretch this second group behind him, with Tripkov losing touch just a little bit in 6th place. He's just dropped out of that 1 second window, and he's having to defend from Nicola Aleda, who previously he ended up getting jumped by in the pit lane after getting caught behind his teammate. He's already passed him once this race, but Aleda will want that position back desperately.
He will want it back, and you can see that Aleda was tempted to make the move into turn 11. I think if he had gone to the correct side off the get-go, he could have made that move stick. But Aleda is not wasting time. You can see the rear flashing red light coming off Tripkov, and that's the indication. That's the go, go, go you want to hear. And there it is, Adelaide getting past and up into P6, and the next set move he has to do is close that second and, what was that, 1.2 seconds behind the next driver ahead. So he needs to close that gap right the way down and basically get himself back in this race, because at the moment, he'll be in a no man's land.
I will say that is more possible for Aleda to accomplish in its current state than Tripkov to accomplish, simply because Aleda has
quite a bit. He has a penalty on his car at the moment. Quickly pull that up as a 6-second time penalty, which I think will get removed.
Yes.
But of course, that is pending review from the steward board. But he is getting punchy, he's getting fast. He's going to look, possibly, to make the move on this lap. This is for P2. Schumacher is going to wait patiently for now. The next opportunity, if he stays close, can be a lunge. Well, you can make a lunge down the inside, normally, but it would be around the outside, get a slingshot, and then make the move up this bendy straight, which will be turns 4, 5, 6, and then dive on down the inside through turn 7. But I think he's holding back. I don't think this is the right time for him. And Tomas is also applying a bit more pressure onto Milan Mayer, sorry, as are we in a point where they may be thinking of the 2-stop early, hence why they're applying pressure on each other?
I'm not too sure. I think the most drivers at the moment will still be trying to make that one-stop work. It's still the better option in terms of the viability on track. I don't think you gain that much more from the fresh medium tires than you would from the just staying out on old mediums. I think they do kind of last, and the delta isn't too excessive. Now, I will say the one thing here that makes it difficult for Sven Schumacher to make a move as you were trying to set up is that, well, A, the car in front of him has DRS, just the same as he does, so there's no real straight line advantage in that capacity. But also, in the event that Sven Schumacher does elect to deplete his battery to try and make a move on Gal in front, Gal has more battery, so he has everything over his competitor at the moment, and yeah, I think he's just sitting pretty in behind Maya. Quite happy to let Maya lead, keep that battery low for Maya as well, and just keep replenishing his, keep restoring it over the laps, because he's maintaining that pressure. Maybe if the mistake arises, he'll happily take it, but the earlier you go, the more vulnerable you leave yourself. So if you sit behind for the next 9 laps and then go on the final or penultimate lap, that's going to be your opportunity to win the race. And if you're thinking long term, that's what Tomas Gal has got to be thinking too.
Absolutely. As perfectly mentioned, lap 35, lap 34, probably the earliest where we really see these drivers properly squabble amongst one another and try and capitalize on another position. Of course, if a free opportunity opens up, a major mistake from the driver ahead, you're going to take it. You're going to take that opportunity to gain a free position and drive away. But the likelihood that this tier 4 group will make a mistake is very, very low in comparison to maybe a higher tier. Who will definitely make a major mistake, as side by side will go Tripkov and Molnar. Molnar is trying to hold that position and I think he actually gained the position, but you can see that Hash driver going to use the slingshot method round the outside, and I think that might be favourable up through turn 4, through turn 5 and through turn 6. It's just not favourable enough, and he has to concede the position and be in the middle of this train.
Yeah, it's still looking a little bit difficult. One thing I will mention, actually, just looking a bit further down, obviously Tripkov has gone backwards. He's been overtaken by Andre Molnar, so a mistake obviously happened. And additionally, a 2-second gap is not looking great to a leader either now. So this has jumped open from being a front quartet into the rest of the field, into now being
contact,
front quartet.
Contact from Nage.
Oh dear, oh dear, Istvan Nage, what's happened?
Yeah, so Nage went into the rear end of Tripkov. Tripkov then got squirmy at the exit of turn 12, which then dropped him back. He's then made a little contact onto Rashan. Rashan's got past him. So all cause from Istvan, late braking and slightly tapping. Will that be warrant of a penalty? Technically by the rules, yes. By a viewer, it's an iffy one, because the viewers want to see them race. They're technically racing, and it was a harmless incident, which, yes, made Tripkov lose a couple of positions. It's an awkward one.
Yeah, well, Tripkov's been beaten up quite a bit in the last few laps, and as such, it's not looking particularly very fun for him here in P10. Either which way, we'll try and slice it some other way. As at the moment, up at the front of the field, everybody is still holding station. But like I was mentioning, it was a little quartet into now a duo into the rest of the field. There was a little bit of a second gap opening up further back down the field, but that seems to have closed itself back up again. The wound is healed. One thing I will note is that Rishan has been surprisingly absent the entirety of this race. Hasn't really been making any moves, has just been holding station, hasn't really been troubling in qualifying, hasn't been really doing anything in the race.
Draw your attention to the front very quickly is Thomas is not going to wait any longer. Lap 28, and Thomas is looking for a move onto Meyer. He tries it round the outside, but the move is unsuccessful. Is he going to do anything into turn 3? That's really the next overtaking opportunity, but no, hangs back. Back to you.
Yeah, that was an interesting one for Gal there. I really wasn't sure that Gal was going to go earlier on in the race. Like, this seems like too early for him to go. He hasn't really accrued enough battery to make this one stick long term either. So maybe he was just close enough that he wanted to put Milan Mayer under pressure. Either which way, it seems to have inspired Thomas Lamminen a little bit further behind, because he's now pressuring the rear wing of Sven Schumacher and is looking particularly punchy in the second sector. He's now going to look to try and open that rear wing here to try and close that gap up a little bit more, and maybe, just maybe, have a sneaky little look in towards the main straight. Of course, though, we'll see if Tomas Gal has a rinse and repeat maneuver, or whether that was really a true dress rehearsal. He got things looking a little bit squirrely there out of turn 12, and that has made him lose touch to the cars ahead of him, or the car ahead of him at the very least. But we'll keep our eyes back now on whether Thomas Lamminen is going to do anything. I don't think he is. He's a little bit too far behind. But Miltos Karafalidis is pitted as well. Schumacher's having a little bit of a look. It's nothing too crazy. But for the moment, we are seeing somebody opting for a 2-stop.
Yeah, so
why?
Bit different, but why not? If you've got you're in a position where you're not you're not gaining like mass amount of points. You're still gaining a good amount of points, but it's not mass amount of points. Let's see what is he putting on the softs. Yeah, he's going for the softs. Where does that put him out? Massively behind the rest of the pack. So
I'm not sure about that, man. He's just gone from 5th place, where everybody else is. Everybody else is on the same tyres as he is. He's not going to lose out.
Oh, Schumacher's gone, Gale's gone wide. Thomas Gale has gone wide, and that has allowed Schumacher to come right into the inside and down the short straight into turn 11.
Contact!
Collision! Schumacher is out of the... Thomas is out of... Well, he's still in this race, but damaged and wounded down into turn 11. They tried to cover the braking zone. He went into the side of the AlphaTauri, and that critically has messed up his race. Now, Itzvan and Rishan are going to get all punchy because there's a driver who was slow. So that's going to back them all up. Rishan finally going to wake up from his slumber. Sleeping Beauty kisses him on his lips. He's going to try and do something, but no, it's Itzvan going to go down the inside of turn 1. And then Rishan, he's going to try and find 2 on the exit of turn 1 through turn 2. He's got to be careful because those drivers are getting really punchy, and they will be fighting. The Haas driver wanted to get involved as well. Rashan's still trying to, you know, attack and defend at the same time through turns 4, 5, and 6. What straight line speed have these drivers got? Has Rashan got anything to make a move? And the Sleeping Beauty will go back to sleep behind the McLaren.
Yeah, that was a whole sequence there, a whole mess. It looked to me like it was possibly Thomas Gale's fault on the straight there. He came over a little bit too much just before the braking zone, left Sven Schumacher with no room on the left-hand side of the track, and as such, they made contact. I don't think there was any damage actually acquired for either driver. I definitely saw a couple of boards going flying through the air, though, braking meter boards and whatnot, but inspecting both cars, at least visually speaking, there seems to be no front wing damage to Sven Schumacher or Thomas Gale's vehicle, but it has allowed Thomas Lamminen to capitalise first and foremost and get into 2nd place, but obviously it's also given Milan Mayer that huge gap, that bit of breathing room that he was looking for that entire time. He's now got that 1 second margin, and it has dropped back the field even further behind because, of course, those soft runners, Nicola Aleda, I think, boxed onto the new mediums, if I'm not mistaken. And then, obviously, behind him, Miltos Karafalidis boxed onto the softs. No, both on softs. I'm not sure why both of them did it, and I'm not sure why why Karafalidis was baited into boxing because Aleda had done.
Odd. But we will never know unless we speak to them, of which we probably won't. But I want to go back to my point. How these drivers are so equal that they're, in this situation, they're not going to make moves unless someone makes a mistake. This mid-pack have demonstrated that exactly. A mistake was caused. We saw, you know, Thomas drop down the field. It backed up a lot of the pack. They capitalized on the moment. Itzvan tried to Rishan tried to capitalize on Itzvan. Itzvan did gain an advantage. Molnar did gain an advantage on both on Thomas. And then you saw QKS and Zamara also capitalize on it as into the pit goes Thomas. So has he got damage that we do not know about, or is he just trying to nick the fastest lap? Might be fastest lap because he's going on to the softs.
I'm not really sure whether this would be the thing that I would go for, trying to nick fastest lap here. You were still, again, it's the same thing as Aleda and Karafalidis. You were sitting pretty in the points, and you haven't gained enough in the last few laps to Patrick Hadler in 10th to really get yourself back into the points. I'm not sure what this whole strategy is really about. You'd need to be gaining upwards of 3 seconds a lap, really, to make it worthwhile, and they have not even been close to that level of performance. Now, this is the time in the race, though, Reese, where we did think that we were going to start seeing some tyre issues. Now, maybe, just maybe, they're getting off those tyres because the wear is so high that they are at risk of a puncture, and they're hoping that maybe those who elect to stay out on these tyres are going to suffer that cruel fate of a puncture in these closing laps. But I feel like this is where the likes of QKS and Bartosz Zamaro are really going to find themselves in the prime position to really capitalise on this with those hard tyres strapped onto their cars at the moment.
They're definitely going to capitalize on this. They have to. You've put yourself in that situation where you are more stronger. You've got the tire life. Use it. Drain out your tire life. Go all out. and make the moves here and now. This is the opportunity to do it. And I do love a little bit of a puncture story, you know, getting that action, you know, drivers up ahead, next thing you know, they're dropping down the field because of a puncture. That would be an interesting story, but we don't know what life these tyres have, and it comes out of nowhere. Tyre life puncture region will start at 60%. 70% is usually where you really see a puncture. If you're really unfortunate between 60 and 70, then I am so sorry to hear about that. But once you're over 70%, that's really when you want to pit. You want to get rid of those tyres and play safe than sorry.
Absolutely. I think that's the thing that we have to be considering here. The reason why people have boxed onto softs has to be for that puncture region. I mean, doing 20 plus laps on the medium tyres around a track as intensive and hard on your tyres as Zandvoort can be, surely is the risk. At the moment, I mean, looking at the lap times, Rishan and whatnot are lapping a second and a bit slower than their previous personal bests. Now, whether that's because they're caught up in the train here behind Andre Molnar or not remains to be seen, but they shouldn't be losing that much time. So that really does show just how much these mediums may well be suffering. And on exit of corners, we're starting to see drivers' rears stepping out. Everything's looking a little bit worse for wear. Speaking of things looking worse for wear, Milan Mayer's second lead has diminished and is now back within that DRS region that the Finn, Thomas Lamminen, may just be able to capitalise upon and put himself, if he can get close enough in these last 2 laps, in a strong position to snatch that race win that Mayer has spent the last 36 laps leading his way through.
Tripkov and Zamara going side by side, and the hard tyre runners are trying to get punched.
Contact!
Now. Yeah, contact from the 2 drivers, but the inside line will open up for Zamara, and Zamara needs to get past the Haas driver of Tripkov, and it's not the first time Tripkov has put his elbows out and said, "You're not allowed through." KQS also getting very punchy as well. He's right up the rear end of that Alfa Romeo driver as the Williams is going to get past the hard runner. And there's another change ahead. It's Van as well. So there's a lot of drivers chopping and changing right now as the Ferrari driver of Rishan is not in a great position and is going to be under threat by 2 drivers who are squabbling amongst each other. As Tripkov is going to find his way back. Those medium tyres, they do have life in him. They do have something left to fight for. Is he going to have to do it round the outside? Nope, can't do it right there.
You'll notice with interest that Bartosz Samaro lost out heavily to Jane Tripkov there in towards turn 1. Ended up getting mugged by Patrick Hadler instead too. Now trying to make that move back up again. Trying to go around the outside, as a matter of fact, of Hadler here up towards turn 12. But it's not, oh, sorry, turn 10. It's not going to be good enough though. DRS reactivated. It's literally pushing the Williams along the track at the moment. That the Alpine still yet to be able to find a way through. QKS also going to be looking for a mirror repeat of what he attempted on Rishan last lap this time round, because it will be one of the last opportunities to do so. As Milan Mayer is about to cross the line to start us onto our final lap of the race. We'll of course keep our eyes towards the front of the field in a moment, but for the time being, this battle, this squabble, basically for the remainder of the points positions from the front 3 is going to be getting very, very spicy. No one giving up an opportunity just yet. Plenty of drivers starting to creep on wide. Plenty of drivers starting to have issues. I think I just saw Bartosz Samaro dropping off the back of this field just a tad. Whether he's got an issue or not remains to be seen from that contact on the lap just before. QKS at the moment still burning battery, but up the front of the field, it looks like Thomas Lamminen is running out of opportunities to make this one work. He is 0.6 of a second back, and he's about to enter what is going to be realistically his last opportunity to snatch this race away from Milan Mayer. And even with penalties applied, by the way, at the moment, Sven Schumacher will still take home a podium if that penalty of 6 seconds still stands.
Yeah, and it's going to be helpful to have the rear of the pack squabbling amongst each other. But a man who has been dominant from the get-go, qualified, I believe it was P3, he has come and overtaken them from the get-go, held the race throughout. The McLaren driver, Milan Mayer, wins the Netherlands Grand Prix.
Oh wait, what's happened to Schumacher?
Puncture!
Schumacher's got a puncture!
Puncture!
Schumacher had a puncture on the final final corner of the race. It did happen. It did happen. A front left puncture for Schumacher on the final corner of the Dutch Grand Prix. Relegates him all the way down the field. A podium is snatched away from him. It's 12th for Schumacher in the end. What a disaster. Oh, that's so bitter. Oh, that's horrible.
Oh, I would be killing myself. And you know what? This brings me flashbacks of when I was in P4 and I got a puncture on the last lap. And it was, I got mine at turn 10 on literally the bank of all places. That is where you definitely don't want a puncture.
Wow, and as such as well, it promotes it to a double McLaren podium. Istvan Nagy, somehow, after getting mithered on the first lap, manages to snatch P3 away from Andre Molnar. I don't know what happened. Again, by the way, looking at the strategy call on those soft runners, whether they were trying to avoid a puncture or not, Miltos Karafalidis, Aleda, Jerofu, Tomascal, all who pitted for softs, end up not scoring apart from Miltos Karafalidis, who snatches 10th away. But what a race. Filled with drama, by the way, from start to finish. Filled with action, filled with overtaking and strategy. I had a little bit of everything apart from different weather.
Yeah, I think if it added a different bit of weather, I think this would have been the ultimate kind of race of pure chaos. Though, that being said, who was your driver of the day?
I think it's hard to go for anybody other than Milan Mayer this time around. He raced exquisitely from start to finish, commanded the field, managed the gap to a very fast Tomascal behind, who was saving a lot of battery as well, and just managed to maintain his pace. Clearly had the superior car throughout the middle sector too. Just looked like he had it all going his way today.
Absolutely, absolutely. And with that concluded, we head to the next race next week, which I believe is gonna be the beautiful cat track of Canada. Montreal, the street circuit with the Wall of Champions. I love this track. I genuinely love the Canadian Grand Prix. It's such a well-made track, full of great overtaking opportunity, and it's a track I can race on really well, so that's another reason why I like it.
I was wondering why you liked it. It's not one of my favorites, but it's certainly going to be an interesting one to watch. So I think without anything left to say, we can hop on off, and you can join us next week at the same time for Canada, round 4 of Formula 4.
This broadcast was brought to you by GT Omega, proudly supporting PSGL.